I watch my reflection in the mirror and gently fix my silver hair. At 78, I'm not as vain as I used to be, but I still care about my appearance. Mom always said, Gwendolyn, be in rags, but with well-groomed hair and a straight back. I guess that's one of the few pieces of wisdom I still follow. From the living room comes the clinking of china. Virginia is already setting out the cups. It's our weekly Thursday tea, a tradition my friends and I have observed for 12 years, ever since I was widowed and joined their widows club. Gwen, the tea's getting cold, Beatrice called out to me in her sonorous, not at all old lady voice. I'm coming, I replied, taking one last look at my reflection. My apartment is small 2 bedrooms, a living room with a kitchen, and a tiny balcony where I grow spicy herbs and cherry tomatoes. But it's enough for me. After Archibald died 12 years ago, I sold our big house. Too many memories, too many empty rooms. It's cozy and bright and quiet here. Most importantly, it's my space where no one looks at me with poorly concealed irritation. I walk out into the living room where my friends Virginia Lancaster, Odette Harlow, and Beatrice Kemble are waiting for me. We call ourselves Brockton's old guard, fragments of the former elite of a small town we know like the back of our hands. Finally! Exclaims Odette, the oldest of us. In her 80s, she has retained a remarkable clarity of mind and a sharp tongue. I thought you were inventing a new hairdo. Odette, you know Gwen can't go out in public without checking every strand. Beatrice winked at me, pouring tea into cups. Virginia, the most practical of us, is already arranging the blueberry pie she baked this morning on saucers. How's your back, Gwen? She asks, handing me the cup. You were complaining yesterday. Better, I nod, taking the hot drink. I put a heating pad on it at night like you suggested. We settle into the chairs that form a cozy semicircle by the window overlooking the park. This is our holy time, a time when we can be ourselves without the masks and conventions we have to wear in front of the rest of the world. So, Odette begins, sipping her tea. What's the news in glorious Brockton this week? This is our ritual. Everyone brings their dose of city news and gossip. Virginia, who's been an administrator at the city hospital for 40 years, knows all the medical secrets. Odette, thanks to her late mayor husband, still has connections in city government. And Beatrice, whose beauty salon was the center of women's conversation for 20 years, collected gossip like a stamp collector. Mayor Pitts is in the hospital again, Virginia reports, lowering her voice, though there is no one else in the apartment but us. His gastritis has worsened, but officially it's a routine checkup. Not surprising, with his love of whiskey, Odette snorts. Speaking of booze, you know who's opening a new liquor store on Oak Street? Chris Donovan. Yeah, the same guy who swore 5 years ago that he was off the booze for good. And I hear the Morrison's daughter is pregnant, enters Beatrice, who loves family dramas. And the father doesn't seem to be the nice young man they pictured at Christmas. I listen to their chatter, smiling. To many, we're just grumpy old women with nothing better to do than wash other people's bones. But for us, it's a way to stay a part of city life, to feel the pulse of Brockton, even when our own families prefer to keep us at a distance. What about your sister-in-law, Gwen? Beatrice suddenly asks, turning to me. Still raising money for the poor kiddies? I sigh. They know all about my sister-in-law, Sheridan. They know that under the guise of a fundraiser for the cat shelter, she finances her spa trips and designer clothes. They also know that I never told my son about it. Now she's moved on to rescuing stray dogs, I reply. Apparently cats don't bring in enough donations anymore. And when are you going to tell Jarvis that his pious wife is a fraud? Odette asks bluntly. Never, I shake my head. It's none of my business. None of your business? Virginia is outraged. Gwen, she's cheating people. She's taking advantage of other people's kindness. And my son is old enough to figure it out for himself, I say firmly. If he chooses to turn a blind eye to her deeds, that's his choice. My friends exchange glances. They've never understood my reluctance to interfere in my son's life. But they don't know what it's like to see someone you raised with love gradually drift away, become a stranger. After Archibald's death, everything changed. For the first year, Jarvis visited me often, helped me with my paperwork, called me almost every day. But after that, then he came less often. The calls dropped to weekly, then monthly. And when I sold the house and moved into this apartment, He seemed to take that as a signal that I no longer needed his help. Sheridan never made much of a secret of how she felt about me. To her, I was just an inconvenient appendage to her husband, an old woman with outdated views that could ruin her perfect social media image of her family. At first, she at least tried to be polite, but after the birth of Garrett and then Fallon, the mask finally fell off. I'm going to tell you something fresh. Beatrice lowers her voice even though we're already speaking in a whisper. Remember Lorraine Foster, who works at the Hartford Insurance Company? I nod. Lorraine is Sheridan's co-worker. They work in the same department. Now Lorraine saw your son Gwen with their new department head, Monica Baker, and they were acting, shall we say, very friendly. Friendly how exactly? Odette's squinting. Lunch at the Red Cardinal Champagne, hand on knee. Beatrice raises her eyebrows meaningfully. And it's not the first time. Lorraine says that everyone in the office is already whispering about their affair. I feel something inside me clench. Jarvis has never been the perfect husband, but cheating, it's not like the son I raised. Or do I just not want to see that in him? And that Monica recently got a promotion, Beatrice adds. She's now in charge of the department where your sister-in-law works. Do you think that Jarvis? Virginia doesn't finish. Sleeping with his boss for career advancement? Looks like it, Odette concludes sternly. And apparently Sheridan doesn't know yet, or the whole town would have heard her screaming by now. I remain silent, stirring my tea, which has long since gone cold. It pains me to hear such things about my own son, but part of me isn't surprised. Jarvis was always looking for the easy way out, always letting others decide for him. First it was Archibald, then Sheridan, now apparently this Monica. What about your grandchildren? Virginia asks, obviously trying to change the subject. Is Garrett still in college? Beatrice asks. Technically, yes, I answer. But according to his social media page, he rarely attends lectures. But he parties regularly, Odette said. My granddaughter Melanie saw him with Ricky Jenkins and his gang. I shudder. Ricky Jenkins is known in Brockton as a petty criminal who somehow miraculously avoids serious trouble with the law. His father is a powerful lawyer, which probably explains a lot. And Fallon? Virginia asks cautiously. How is she? She was doing well until she got in trouble with that girl Avery. I sigh. Fallon's always been a difficult child. Sharp, direct. But what she's doing to that poor girl? Bully her, Beatrice finishes for me. I heard about it from Martha Simmons. Her granddaughter goes to the same college. She says Fallon's been driving that Avery girl crazy. I know, I nod. I tried to talk to her about it, but she, like her parents, won't listen to you, Odette summarizes. I don't answer. What can I say? She's right. My family stopped listening to me a long time ago. To them, I'm just an old woman who sometimes calls with uncomfortable questions or unsolicited advice. Gwen, you've got to stop being so... Virginia's searching for a word. So patient. They're taking advantage of your kindness. I'd say your weakness, Odette adds uncompromisingly. You let them wipe their feet on you. I just don't want a war, I replied tiredly. What's the point? They won't change anyway. But you could at least stand up for yourself, Beatrice says softly, covering my hand with hers. You deserve respect, Gwen. I'm about to answer when my phone rings. I see my son's name on the screen and involuntarily tense up. Jarvis calls so infrequently that every call he makes me anxious. Jarvis? I answer, trying to make my voice sound normal. Hi, Mom. My son's voice sounds unexpectedly cheerful. How are you? Fine, thanks. I notice my friends exchanging meaningful glances. Did something happen? Why is something wrong? He sounded annoyed. I'm just calling to see how you're doing. I'm not saying anything. We both know that's not true. Jarvis doesn't call just to see how I'm doing. Actually, he continues after a pause, Sheridan and I were thinking, we're celebrating Thanksgiving at home this year. It would be great if you could come to our place. I almost dropped my phone in surprise. I've never been invited to a family holiday party in the last 7 years. Jarvis usually called the day before or after the fact, explaining that they'd decided to have a small get-together or had gone to Sheridan's in-laws' house. Cell phone rings. Mom, Are you there? Asks her son impatiently. Yeah, I'm here, I answer, trying to gather my thoughts. I'm just surprised. Usually you celebrate without me. This year we want the whole family together. His voice sounds strained. Garrett and Fallon will be there, and, well, it'd be great if you could come too. Thank you for inviting me, I say cautiously. Of course I'll come. Great! He exhales, clearly relieved. Thursday, about 3 o'clock? We're planning dinner for 5. Okay, I'll be there at 3. I still can't believe what's happening. Great. I'll see you Thursday then. He quickly says goodbye and hangs up without waiting for my response. I slowly put the phone away and look at my friends, who are eagerly waiting for an explanation. Jarvis invited me to Thanksgiving, I say, still stunned. For the first time in 7 years. Something's not right, Odette says immediately, narrowing her eyes. Why the sudden love? Odette! Virginia rebukes her. Maybe they're just trying to mend their relationship. In their family, Odette snorts. Do you believe that yourself? Maybe they want something, Beatrice suggests. Money or help with the kids? I shake my head. I don't have the kind of money they need, and I haven't spoken to my grandchildren in months. Then why? Odette persists. I shrug, feeling a strange mixture of hope and anxiety inside. I don't know, but I think I'm about to find out. This Thanksgiving is going to be a disaster, Odette says, stirring her tea with a spoon. It's been a week since Jarvis's unexpected call, and we're back together for our Thursday tea. Outside the window, a fine rain drizzles, drumming on the eaves as a reminder of winter's inevitable approach. Thanksgiving is only 3 days away, and my thoughts keep returning to the upcoming visit. You're always so optimistic, Odette, Virginia said, smiling as she set the saucers of homemade apple pie on the table. I'm a realist, dear. Odette straightens her back. One thing I've learned in 70 years of being friends with men is that if they suddenly show interest, they want something. 70 years of friendship with men? Beatrice giggled. Is that what you call it now? Odette jokingly wags her finger at her. When you get to my age, you can call it whatever you want. I smile as I watch them argue. When you're in your 70s, you begin to appreciate these moments of carefree fun. They become rare, precious, like sunny days in November. Gwen, have you decided what you're going to wear? Virginia asks, bringing the conversation back to the upcoming holiday. My best funeral dress, Odette snorts before I can answer. Considering it's where the burial of her hopes for a normal relationship with her family will take place. Odette! Beatrice yells at her, but I can see the corners of her lips quivering. I haven't decided yet, I answer honestly. Maybe the blue one with the collar. Oh, the one we bought last year. Virginia perks up. It suits you very well. It emphasizes your eyes. And your figure, adds Beatrice. Show that sister-in-law of yours that at your age you still look better than she ever will. I shake my head. I'm not going to show anyone anything. I just want to get through this evening with as little damage as possible. Why did you agree in the first place? Odette asks, looking at me over her glasses. You could have made an excuse, I shrug. He's my son, Odette. No matter what. There's a pause. My friends know that behind those simple words lies a story of disappointment, of trying to mend relationships and drifting apart. Speaking of your son, Beatrice lowers her voice, though there is no one else in the apartment but us. I have news about his friendship with his boss. I tense involuntarily. It seems like after all these years of disappointment with Jarvis, I should be used to it, but every new slip-up feels like a fresh wound. Tell me. I take a sip of my tea, preparing for the worst. You remember Dorothy Parker? She works as a receptionist at the Red Cardinal? I nod. The Red Cardinal is the most expensive restaurant in Brockton, the place where business deals are made and romantic dates take place. Anyway, Dorothy tells me that your Jarvis and this Monica Baker of yours have booked a room at the restaurant's hotel for tomorrow. They're not even hiding, Virginia shakes her head. Do you think Sheridan knows? I think of my sister-in-law, the bossy, calculating woman who keeps the whole house under strict control. If she did, the whole town would have heard by now, I answer. Sheridan isn't the type to swallow hard feelings. I think back to the day I first suspected something was wrong. It was about 6 months ago. I happened to meet Jarvis at the mall. He was sitting in a cafe with a beautiful dark-haired woman, and their posture, the way she leaned toward him, the way he looked at her, read more than just a business relationship. When I asked him about it later, he laughed nervously and explained that it was a work meeting. I pretended to believe it. After all, what right did I have to meddle in his life? And speaking of Sheridan, Beatrice continued, did you hear about her latest charity scam? I sigh. What is it this time? She raised almost $3,000 to save a homeless animal shelter. Beatrice draws quotation marks in the air. And last week she was seen wearing a new designer coat and carrying a Prada bag. Maybe she earned it on her own, Virginia remarks, always willing to give a person a chance. Honey, Odette looks at her with gentle condescension. An accountant at a small insurance company can't afford a $1,000 bag, especially when her husband is already spending half the family budget on restaurants for his mistress. I remain silent, but inside I shrink at the thought that my son and his wife have become so alien to me. I think back to Jarvis as a child and open, honest boy who couldn't tell a lie without blushing. When did he turn into this man? The first warning signs came shortly after his marriage to Sheridan. She'd made it clear right off the bat that she'd be in charge of their home. At first, it even seemed like the right thing to do. My boy had always been too soft. He needed someone strong around him. But gradually, I began to see his will melt away, the way he stopped expressing his own opinions, agreeing with everything Sheridan said. And then Garrett was born, and it got worse. Sheridan used the baby as a shield, as a weapon. We can't come over. Garrett's sick. Garrett needs rest. Don't call so often. We're doing what's best for Garrett. And then when Fallon showed up, I was a total extra in their lives. I tried to talk to Jarvis, I said out loud, not realizing I was interrupting someone else's story. Last year on his birthday, I could see that he was unhappy, that something was wrong, but he wouldn't listen. I think back to that night. We were sitting in a restaurant, just the two of us, a rare opportunity to talk without Sheridan. I gently asked if everything was okay at their house, if he needed help. He flared up, accused me of invading his privacy, and left before finishing dessert. We haven't seen each other alone since. They're adults, Gwen, Virginia says softly. You can't save them from themselves. I know, I answer. But it's not just themselves they're drowning. There are children in there too. What about the children? Beatrice asks. How is your grandson, Garrett? Still the same, I sigh. I saw pictures of him on social media last week. He's with this Ricky Jenkins guy. They were celebrating something, and judging by the bottles on the table, it wasn't winning a chess tournament. That Jenkins is bad company, Odette frowned. My granddaughter Helen says he's involved in some kind of drug business. Not just drugs, Virginia adds. There's whispers at the hospital that he and his friends are involved in petty theft. No one's reported him to the police yet, but I close my eyes, trying to control my anxiety. I remember the first time I saw Garrett with a cigarette. He was only 15. I told Jarvis about it, but he just brushed it off. Everybody tries it at that age, Mom. Don't make a big deal out of it. And when I noticed that Garrett seemed to have come to the family dinner drunk, Sheridan accused me of trying to smear her son. How's your granddaughter doing? Beatrice asks. Fallon, right? Fallon? I shake my head. She's the hardest. She's always had a difficult temper, but what's happening now? I remember a month ago I got a call from the mother of a girl who goes to college with Fallon. She was furious. She said Fallon had been terrorizing her daughter Avery for months, spreading rumors about her, ridiculing her on social media, turning other students against her. It got to the point where Avery started skipping classes, and then she started talking about transferring to another college. I tried to talk to Fallon, but she just laughed in my face. Grandma, you don't understand anything about modern life. That Avery is a poser and a liar, she deserves everything she gets. I heard that this girl, Avery, tried to... Virginia doesn't finish the sentence, but I know what she means. Yeah, I nod. Her mother told me that Avery tried to kill herself. Luckily, it failed. She's in therapy now. And your granddaughter doesn't even feel guilty? Beatrice is outraged. She thinks Avery is just looking for attention, I say bitterly. When I told Jarvis and Sheridan, they said I was exaggerating and that kids should work out their own conflicts. What a creepy family. Odette couldn't stand it. I'm sorry, Gwen, but your son and his wife are terrible parents. I'm not arguing. What can I say? She's right. Jarvis and Sheridan are so busy with their own problems, they're completely oblivious to what's going on with their kids. Or maybe they just don't want to notice. And you're still going to their house for Thanksgiving? Virginia asks with concern. Yes, I answer firmly. They're my family, whatever they are. A family that ignored you for years, Odette reminds me. And suddenly invited you to the party, Beatrice adds. Don't you find that suspicious? I shrug. Of course I do. But maybe they've really decided to mend their relationship. Three pairs of eyes look at me with the same expression of skepticism. Okay, I give up. They probably want something. But I'm going anyway, if only to find out what it is. Just be careful, Virginia warns me. I don't trust your sister-in-law. Neither do I sigh. But what can she do? Humiliate me in public? We all laugh, but there's no mirth in our laughter. We all realize that Sheridan is quite capable of doing that. By the way, Beatrice leans closer, have you not heard about your sister-in-law's latest antics? I shake my head, preparing myself for another unpleasant story. Remember the charity auction for the town library? The one where they raffled off collector's editions? Sure, I nodded. I donated a few books from Archibald's collection myself. Anyway, Sheridan won a first edition of The Great Gatsby. They say she paid almost $5,000. I raise my eyebrows in surprise. Sheridan has never been a lover of literature. As far as I know, the only books she reads are manuals on positive thinking and financial success. And you know what she did with it? Beatrice continues. She put it on eBay at twice the price. She used a charity auction to resell it? Virginia is outraged. Exactly, Beatrice nods. And even though all the proceeds from the auction went to renovate the children's section of the library, I sigh. It's so Sheridan, always looking to make a profit, even when it comes to charity. And now, Odette summarizes, this woman invites you to a family dinner, and you think nothing bad's gonna happen? I'm not naive, Odette, I answer, though doubt gnaws at me. I'm going in there with my eyes open. If they're up to something, I'll see it. And what are you going to do if they start acting like they usually do? Virginia asks. I wonder. For years I've endured the neglect, the quiet insults, the insinuations that I'm superfluous. I've pretended not to notice the way Sheridan rolls his eyes when I speak, the way Jarvis checks his phone while I talk about my life, the way my grandchildren barely say hello to me. I swallow my resentment, smile, and continue to pretend everything is fine. I don't know, I answer honestly. I guess I'll just be patient, like I always am. Gwen? Odette takes my hand, her voice suddenly serious without the usual irony. You're 78 years old. How much more are you going to put up with? I look at her, then at Virginia and Beatrice. In their eyes, I see genuine concern. These women know me better than my own family. They have been there for me in the most difficult moments of my life. When Archibald died. When I sold the house. When I worried about my son's estrangement. They have never betrayed me. Never pretended to listen when they were really thinking about something else. They are my real family. I don't know, I repeat quietly. But I guess everyone's patience has a limit. Even mine. That's good. Odette squeezes my hand. Because I have a feeling something's going to happen this Thanksgiving. And you need to be ready. For what? I ask. To finally tell them the truth, she answers simply. I look down at my hands, an older woman's hands with veins showing beneath the thin skin age spots. But they are strong hands. Hands that have raised a child, buried a husband, endured loss and disappointment. Hands that can still clench into fists. Maybe you're right, I finally say. Maybe it is time. Thanksgiving came cold and clear. I woke up early, long before the alarm clock rang, and lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, imagining how the day would go. In the kitchen, I made tea longer than usual, as if every extra minute could delay the inevitable. The blue dress with the collar hung on the closet door, ironed and ready. I put it on, carefully styled my hair, and applied light makeup. Not for Sheridan or Jarvis, but for myself. My mom always said, if you want to be strong, look accordingly. One last look in the mirror, an older woman with a straight back and a wary look. I almost didn't recognize myself. Where was the woman who had let her family wipe their feet on her for years? Had the conversation with my friends had such an effect on me? The cab ride passed in silence. The driver tried to make small talk about the weather, but quickly realized I wasn't in the mood for small talk. I looked out the window at the familiar streets of Brockton, at the houses decorated with holiday lights and turkeys. Jarvis and Sheridan's house stood on a hill in an upscale section of town, 2 stories high, with a manicured garden and a 2-car garage. It was the typical home of a successful middle-class American family. I remembered when they'd bought it 15 years ago when I'd helped them organize the children's rooms and plant flowers in the garden. Back then, I was still a part of their lives, not an inconvenient appendage they remembered once a year. There were several unfamiliar cars parked outside the house, so the guests had already gathered. I took a deep breath, paid the cabbie, and headed for the front door. The bell rang unexpectedly loud in the silence of the November day. A few seconds later, the door opened and Jarvis appeared on the doorstep. "Mom!" He smiled too wide, too fake. "You're right on time." He hugged me awkwardly, and I caught a whiff of expensive cologne mixed with the scent of whiskey. Jarvis had clearly started celebrating in advance. "Thank you for inviting me," I said as I entered the house. "Sheridan will be happy to see you," he said so lamely that I almost laughed in his face. There were voices and laughter coming from the living room. Jarvis led me there, and all eyes turned to us. There were 10 people in the room, some I knew, others I was seeing for the first time. "Look who's here!" Jarvis announced with feigned enthusiasm. "My mom!" Sheridan, dressed in an elegant burgundy dress that was clearly worth more than my entire closet, got up from the couch and walked over to me. A fake smile played on her face, unaffected by her eyes. "Gwendolyn, finally!" She pecked the air near my cheek. "We thought you would not come." "I promised," I replied, taking off my coat. "Let me introduce you to the guests." Sheridan took my hand, her fingers digging into my skin a little harder than necessary. "This is Robert and Margaret Hill, Jarvis's cousin and his wife." I shook hands with the elderly couple. Robert vaguely resembled the late Archibald, the same deep-set eyes, the same tilt of the head. "And this is their daughter Helena and her husband Frederick." The young couple nodded politely at me. "And of course you remember Howard and Patricia," Sheridan continued, pointing to another couple I'd actually met at Jarvis's wedding years ago. "It's good to see you all," I said, trying to memorize the names. "Where are Garrett and Fallon?" I asked, not seeing my grandchildren among the guests. "They're upstairs getting dressed," Sheridan said with a touch of irritation. "Those kids, always late." I noticed Jarvis filling his whiskey glass for the 3rd time in the few minutes I'd been in the house. Was he nervous? Or was he just following his usual habit? "Gwendolyn," Robert Hill turned to me. "Jarvis told me that you taught at the college?" "Yes, English literature." I nodded. "Long since retired, of course." "My mom was one of the best teachers at Brockton College," Jarvis interjected, approaching us with another glass. "Her students still remember her lectures." I looked at my son in surprise. He'd never said that about me, at least not in my presence. "Did he?" Margaret Hill turned to me interestedly. "It must be so exciting to open young minds to the world of literature." "Yes, it was," I began. But Sheridan interrupted me. "Gwendolyn, dear, will you help me in the kitchen?" She firmly took me by the elbow and practically dragged me out of the living room, not letting me finish the sentence. As soon as we were in the kitchen, her smile disappeared. "What are you wearing?" she asked, eyeing me critically. "A dress," I answered, puzzled. "I can see that it's a dress," she rolled her eyes. "But couldn't you have worn something a little more festive, less like dressing for a funeral?" I felt anger start to boil up inside, but I held it back. I thought blue was a neutral color, appropriate for any occasion. "It doesn't matter," she waved her hand. "Look, these people are very important to Jarvis. Robert Hill is a powerful man at the construction company where Jarvis works. He can help him get a promotion, so that's what this is about. They invited me here to impress Jarvis's boss. Of course they did. Happy family, 3 generations at the table. Perfect Thanksgiving picture. So what do you want me to do? I asked you straight up. Just be normal, Sheridan replied. Don't talk about your weird hobbies or politics or anything that might seem outdated. And for God's sake, don't mention your girlfriends or your gossip. I held back a sharp remark that was about to roll off my tongue. So my life, my interests, my friends are all weird and outdated. I'll try to live up to your expectations, Sheridan, I said with a slight irony that she didn't notice, of course. Oh, good, she nodded, clearly not catching the sarcasm. Now take these hors d'oeuvres and bring them to the living room. She handed me a tray of canapes, turning me from guest to servant with a flick of her hand. When I returned to the living room, I saw that my grandchildren had joined the company. Garrett, a tall 22-year-old with carelessly styled hair, stood by the fireplace talking to Frederick. Fallon, a slender 19-year-old girl, sat on the couch, tucked away on her phone. Neither of them even looked in my direction. Here are the appetizers, I announced, setting the tray on the coffee table. Garrett glanced at me and nodded. Hi, Grandma. Fallon didn't even look up from her phone screen. Fallon, Jarvis called out to her. Say hi to Grandma. Hi, she mumbled, not looking up. What wonderful grandchildren you have, Patricia said, apparently trying to smooth over the awkwardness. Garrett, did Jarvis tell you that you're in college? Yes, law school, he answered with a slight smile that I'd never seen when he talked to me. Law school? Last I'd heard, he'd almost gotten kicked out of the economics department because of absences and failing grades. What about you, Fallon? Helena asked. I'm in psychology, my granddaughter answered, finally getting off the phone. Psychology? The girl who drove a classmate to attempt suicide is studying psychology? I watched in silence as my family turned into a magazine cover picture. Perfect parents, successful children, loving grandmother. It was all so fake it made my teeth clench. Dinner is ready, Sheridan announced, appearing in the doorway. Please join us. The dining room was tastefully decorated cream tablecloths, candles, fall flowers in a vase. In the center of the table was a huge turkey surrounded by traditional Thanksgiving dishes. Sit, 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 Sheridan invited, pointing to the seats. I was seated at the far end of the table between Fallon and Howard, as far away from the important guests as possible. It was so obvious that I almost laughed. Jarvis, seated at the head of the table, made a short speech about family values and gratitude, and then began carving the turkey. I noticed his hands were shaking. You bet they were, after so much whiskey. The conversation at the table flowed smoothly, moving from one safe topic to another, the weather, sports, recent movies. Sheridan glowed as she talked about her charity work, how she raised money for homeless animals. That's so noble, Margaret marveled. It's rare to find people who are willing to help others unselfishly these days. I almost choked on my cranberry sauce. Selflessly? If only she knew where this money really goes. And you, Gwendolyn? Robert turned to me. What do you do in retirement? Do you have any hobbies? All eyes turned to me. I noticed how tense Sheridan. I read, walk a lot, go out with friends, I said carefully, mindful of my sister-in-law's warning. Mom has a hobby club, Jarvis cut in. They get together once a week and they discuss books and stuff like that. It's not really a social club, I corrected him. Just get-togethers with old friends. Oh, that's nice, Helena said. Like tea parties? Exactly, I nodded. We drink tea and talk. And gossiping, Sheridan said suddenly, laughing loudly. Those old ladies know everything about everyone in Brockton. Her laughter sounded fake, almost aggressive. I noticed Margaret and Patricia exchange glances. We don't just gossip, I replied calmly. We discuss books, news, share memories. Come on, Mom. Jarvis picked up on his wife's tone. We all know what you're doing in there, washing the bones of the whole town. It's normal for your age. My age? I felt the color rush to my face. At her age, a lot of people don't remember where they are, Sheridan added, addressing the guests as if I wasn't at the table. And Gwendolyn is still quite functional. There were unsure chuckles. I noticed Robert and Margaret glance over with obvious disapproval. Functional? I interjected, raising an eyebrow. Interesting choice of words, Sheridan. Well, you know what I mean, she waved her hand. At your age, It's quite an accomplishment to live on your own, to cook for yourself, to dress yourself. Grandma sometimes forgets to turn off the stove, Fallon interjected, looking at me with a slight chuckle. Really, Mom? It was an outright lie. I never forgot to turn off the stove, and Fallon couldn't know that because she hadn't been in my apartment in over a year. Really? Margaret asked worriedly. No, not really, I answered firmly. I've never forgotten to turn off the stove. You just don't remember, Garrett grinned. It's normal at your age. There's that your age thing again. They talked about me as if I were a frail old woman on the verge of dementia, not a woman who still read without glasses and walked 3 miles every day. Mom was always a little absent-minded, Jarvis added, pouring himself some wine. Even when I was a kid, she could forget where she'd put her keys or her glasses. Like any normal person, I said, feeling the anger building up inside. Sure, Sheridan smiled patronizingly. But it's happening more often now, isn't it? I looked at her pointedly. No, it hasn't. You just don't notice, she shook her head. It's a sign of age, too. Yeah, and those clothes, Fallon glanced at my blue dress. Grandma, you look like you're going to a funeral, not a party. Fallon! Robert tried to shush the girl, but Sheridan only laughed. No, it's all right. Gwendolyn doesn't take offense, does she? She knows that we love her despite her peculiarities. Peculiarities? Now I was not only old and out of my mind, but also some kind of a curiosity to be tolerated out of mercy. You know, grandmother, Fallon continued, encouraged by her mother's encouragement. You should update your closet. You look like an old bag. Fallon! Robert tried to intervene again, but now Jarvis joined in the fun. Let it go, Robert, he said with a wave of his hand. Mother knows we're joking. She likes to be teased, don't you, Mom? No, I didn't. I never liked being humiliated, especially in front of other people. But for years I kept quiet, smiled, and swallowed the insults because I didn't want scandals. I didn't want to lose touch with my son and grandchildren. You know what the funny thing is? Sheridan continued, addressing all the guests. Gwendolyn thinks she can still give us advice on how to live. Can you imagine? A woman who can't remember where she put her glasses wants to teach us how to raise children. Everyone laughed except Robert and Margaret, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. And remember when she tried to teach Garrett how to play chess? Jarvis picked up on that. And forgot the rules in the middle of the game? That was a lie. I've never forgotten the rules of chess. I've played it all my life and even won university tournaments when I was young. And how she once came to us wearing 2 different shoes, Fallon added, and everyone laughed again. Another lie. I never left the house unkempt. I sat there feeling every word, every laugh stabbing into me like a knife. They talked about me like I wasn't even there, like I was some funny pet to make fun of. Anyway, Sheridan summarized, wiping away tears of laughter. We keep Gwendolyn to ourselves because she's family after all, but sometimes it's a real challenge. A test? I was a test for them? Something inside me broke. The thin thread of patience that had kept me from confrontation for years was suddenly severed. You know, I said quietly but clearly, and all conversation at the table instantly died down. I do gossip a lot with my girlfriends. Sheridan smiled victoriously, obviously thinking that I recognized that she was right. We know a lot of interesting things about everyone in Brockton, I continued, looking directly at her. Like how some people raise money for charity and then spend it on designer handbags and spa trips. Sheridan's smile froze. Or how some men cheat on their wives with their bosses in hopes of getting a promotion. I shifted my gaze to Jarvis, who turned pale and set his wine glass aside. Mom, what are you... He started, but I didn't let him finish. Or about how some young men participate in store robberies with their hooligan friends. I looked at Garrett, who was frozen with a fork in his hand. Or how some girls drive their classmates to attempt suicide with their bullying. Fallon dropped the phone. Grandma, are you out of your mind? She hissed. Maybe, I smiled. It's normal at my age, isn't it? There was a dead silence in the room. Everyone looked at me with shock, the guests, my family, everyone. I know everything about you, I continued calmly. I know that you, Sheridan, cheat people by raising money for homeless animals when you're really spending it on yourself. I know that you, Jarvis, are sleeping with Monica Baker in hopes of getting a promotion. I know that Garrett was involved in the electronics store robbery last week with Ricky Jenkins, and I know Fallon started an online hate group against Avery Parker, who tried to kill herself over it. My family members' faces changed before my eyes, from shock to fear, from fear to anger. But I never talked about it. I looked around the numb table. Because I didn't want to interfere with your life. Because I thought adults should be able to solve their own problems. But if you think I'm an old woman out of my mind who can be humiliated in front of strangers, then maybe I can afford a little candor too. I stood up from the table, feeling my knees shake, but not letting it show on my face. Thank you for dinner, I said, addressing everyone at once and no one in particular. But I'd better be going. Old women out of their minds usually have an early bedtime. I headed for the door, hearing nothing but shocked silence behind me. No one tried to stop me. No one said a word. In the hallway, I grabbed my coat, slipped it over my shoulders, and walked out into the cold November evening, closing the door of the house I knew I would never return to. I don't remember how I got home. The cab drove across town, and I stared out the window with a blank stare, replaying the events of the evening over and over in my head. The shocked faces, the sepulchral silence, the sound of the door closing, it all haunted me like images from a movie I didn't want to watch. The apartment was dark and quiet. I didn't turn on the light, just sat in the chair by the window and stared out at Brockton at night, the lights twinkling. The city was alive with people celebrating Thanksgiving, fighting and making up, and I sat in the dark, feeling strangely numb. What had I done? The question throbbed in my head like a painful boil. Had I permanently ruined my relationship with my only son? Had I lost my last connection with my grandchildren? Did I have the right to say all this, even if it was true? My thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. There they were, my friends, all three of them with worried faces and a bag with a bottle of wine sticking out of it. We were worried, Virginia said, hugging me. We called you, but you didn't answer. I turned my phone off, I admitted as I let them into the apartment. You did the right thing, Odette nodded, walking into the living room. From the look of you, it didn't go very smoothly. You could say that, I smiled weakly. Beatrice was already in the kitchen, pulling out glasses and opening wine. Tell me, she demanded, pouring the dark red liquid into glasses. And I did. Slowly, in detail, not missing a single detail from the moment of my arrival to my dramatic departure. They listened in silence, not interrupting, only occasionally exchanging glances or shaking their heads. Jesus, Gwen, Virginia exhaled when I finished. Did they really say all that? In front of the guests? Every word. I took a sip of wine. It was tart and warm, like a hug from an old friend. And you fought back. Odette shook her head with an expression of disbelief and admiration. Finally. I probably shouldn't have. I stared into my glass as if I could find answers there. It's wrong to bring family problems into the open. Is it right to humiliate your elderly mother in front of strangers? Beatrice snorted. No, dear, you did exactly what needed to be done. But I ruined Jarvis's family. I said it out loud, and I felt hurt by my own words. You didn't destroy anything, Virginia said firmly. They destroyed their own family with their lies and deceit. You just ripped the mask off their hypocrisy. I wanted to object, to say that it wasn't that simple, that I should have held back, kept my mouth shut, put up with it like I'd been doing for years. But I couldn't. The phone, which I finally turned on, rang. Jarvis. I showed the screen to my friends. Answer it, Odette nodded. Let him speak. I took a deep breath and accepted the call, putting it on speaker. Gwendolyn Prescott here. My voice sounded surprisingly calm. What the hell did you do? Jarvis's voice, on the contrary, shook with rage. In the background, I could hear yelling. It sounded like Sheridan was arguing with someone. I don't know what you're talking about. I glanced at my friends, who were leaning forward, eagerly listening to the conversation. You don't! He was almost shouting. You ruined my family! Sheridan wants a divorce. Robert canceled my promotion. The kids are hysterical. All because of your filthy fabrications. Fictions? I felt the anger rising inside me again. Are you sure, Jarvis? Of course I am. He put the receiver away for a moment, and I heard a muffled, No, darling, I never... It's all lies. My mother is out of her mind. So you're not sleeping with Monica Baker, I said in a steady voice. No, he almost shrieked. Of course not. And you didn't meet her in the hotel room at the Red Cardinal last night? There was a pause. It was a business dinner. His voice suddenly became uncertain. In a hotel room? I raised an eyebrow, though he couldn't see it. Where did you? He paused. Who told you? I have my sources, Jarvis. I looked at my friends, who applauded silently. And I can provide proof of everything I said at dinner. Photographs, testimonies, documents, if you insist, of course. Silence again, then the sound of the door slamming shut. Obviously, he'd moved to another room, away from his scandalized wife. Listen, Mom. His voice changed, became pleading. I don't know where you got all this from, but you have to fix it. Call Sheridan, tell her you made it all up, that it was a joke, senility, whatever. Senile senility? I felt myself starting to boil again. You mean that while you were humiliating me in front of the guests, I was quite sane, but when I told you the truth, I suddenly became senile? That's not what I meant, he said hurriedly, as if he was afraid I'd hang up. It's just, you don't understand what's at stake. My career, my marriage, my children's future. You put it all on the line when you started lying and cheating and covering up for your children's misdeeds. I was adamant. I'm not going to deny anything, Jarvis. I told the truth and you know it. Mom, please, he was really begging now. Yeah, I'll do whatever you want. I'll visit you more often. I'll bring the kids. Even Sheridan will. I don't need handouts, Jarvis, I interrupted him. And I don't need a family that only comes to me because of blackmail. For years, you've treated me like a burden, like an annoying old woman to be put up with out of charity. And today you showed your true colors. It was just a joke, he tried to justify himself. We didn't mean to offend you. No, Jarvis, it wasn't a joke. Jokes are funny. What you did was bullying, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Silence again, then a quiet, almost whisper. What are you going to do? Tell everyone? Embarrass us in front of the whole town? No, I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. I'm not going to do anything. This is your problem, and you have to deal with it yourself. I'm not interfering in your lives anymore. But you've already interfered. He raised his voice again. You've ruined everything. No, Jarvis, I said quietly but firmly. You ruined everything. Your lies, your betrayal, your weakness. And now you have to live with the consequences. I heard him breathing heavily into the receiver. You're going to regret this, he finally said in a threatening tone. Maybe, I agreed. But not tonight. And I hung up the phone, feeling strangely relieved, as if I'd shed a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. Bravo, Odette exclaimed, raising her glass. To Gwendolyn Prescott, who finally said everything she thinks. We clinked glasses, and I took a big sip of wine, feeling it burn my throat. You were great, Virginia said, squeezing my hand. I was so proud of you, listening to that conversation. I wonder what's going on at Jarvis's house right now, Beatrice said thoughtfully, filling the glasses a second time. I pictured the scene. Sheridan yelling at Jarvis, accusing him of cheating on her. The guests hurriedly gathering, trying to slip away from the family scandal. Garrett probably running out of the house to meet his dubious friends. Fallon locked in her room, probably deleting compromising posts from social media. Total chaos, I voiced my thoughts. And it's my fault. No, Virginia said firmly. It's their fault. They created this chaos through their own actions. But I triggered the explosion. I could still feel the prick of guilt. Which would have happened sooner or later anyway, Beatrice said. You can't live a lie forever. My friend was right. Sooner or later, all secrets come out. Sheridan would have found out about Jarvis's affair. The police would have caught Garrett. Avery's parents would have sued the Fallons. I just hastened the inevitable. I wonder what will happen next, Odette said thoughtfully. Do you think Sheridan will really file for divorce? Absolutely, Beatrice said confidently. She'd always been very principled about fidelity, at least other people's fidelity. And Jarvis? Virginia asked. What will happen to him? I thought of my son, weak, cowardly, always looking for the easy way out. What will he do now that his carefully constructed world has collapsed? He'll dodge, I answered bitterly, making excuses looking for someone to blame. That had always been his strategy. My phone rang again. This time it was an unfamiliar number. Don't answer it, Odette suggested. No more drama today. But something told me I should answer it. And I was right. Robert Hill was on the other end of the line, the same relative who'd been at the dinner. Mrs. Prescott? His voice sounded restrained. I hope I haven't disturbed you. Not at all, Mr. Hill, I answered, turning on the speakerphone so my friends could hear. To what do I owe this late call? I wanted to apologize for what happened today, he said. The way you were treated. It was unforgivable. I didn't expect it. I thought he'd blame me for ruining the evening, for creating a scandal. Thank you, Mr. Hill, but it's not you who should be apologizing. And yet he cleared his throat. I was also wondering, what you said about Jarvis and Monica Baker, is it true? I hesitated. It's one thing to reveal the truth in a moment of emotional outburst, and quite another to confirm it in cold blood to an outsider. I don't make unsubstantiated statements, Mr. Hill, I finally replied. I see, he sighed. In that case, I'm afraid I'll have to reconsider Jarvis's promotion. Our company does not welcome this kind of employee relations. I understand, I said, feeling my heart clench. Despite everything that had happened, Jarvis was still my son, and it hurt me to be the cause of his problems. One more thing, Robert continued. My wife and I were impressed by your candor. Not many people would have dared to do such a thing. It wasn't an act of bravery, Mr. Hill, I admitted honestly. It was more an act of desperation that had built up over the years. Anyway, his voice grew warmer. We'd like to invite you to dinner soon, without other family members. The suggestion took me by surprise. That's very kind of you, I said. I'll think about it. After the conversation with Robert, my friends and I sat in silence, digesting what had happened. You seem to have made an impression on this Robert, Beatrice said with a slight smile. And robbed Jarvis of his promotion, I added bitterly. He robbed himself of the promotion, Odette countered. When he decided he could get it in bed instead of working. I knew she was right, but I still felt like a traitor. A mother's instinct to protect her child, even an adult, even a wronged one, isn't easily stifled. My phone rang again. This time it was Sheridan. I hesitated but answered. Are you happy? She asked without preamble. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been screaming for a long time. You ruined my family! Hello, Sheridan, I said calmly. I didn't destroy your family. I just told the truth. The truth? She laughed bitterly. You called me a thief in front of all our guests. I said you were using the money raised for charity for your own personal use. I corrected her. That's not true? It's none of your business, she was almost shouting. You had no right to interfere in our lives, just like you had no right to humiliate me in front of the guests. I remained calm. But you did. She was silent for a moment, apparently not expecting that answer. Jarvis swears he didn't cheat on me, she said quietly. He says you made it all up. And you believe him? I asked. There was another pause. I don't know, she said, her voice suddenly uncertain. I don't know who to believe. Trust the facts, Sheridan, I sighed. Ask Monica Baker, or check the surveillance tapes at the Red Cardinal. The truth is out there somewhere. Why are you doing this? She sounded almost confused. Why are you ruining our lives? I'm not ruining your life, Sheridan, I said softly. I just stopped letting you ruin mine. She inhaled sharply, as if she was going to say something else, but she changed her mind and hung up. Well, that was intense, Virginia commented, pouring us more wine. They're all in shock, Beatrice remarked. They did not expect that quiet, submissive Gwendolyn suddenly turned into a whistleblower. They thought they could forever humiliate you with impunity, added Odette. And you showed them that it is not so. I looked at my friends, these amazing women who had supported me all my life, and I felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, I said, raising my glass, for always being there for me, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. To Gwendolyn, Odette raised her glass, the bravest of us all. We clinked glasses again, and I felt the tension slowly let go of me. Yes, I may have ruined my relationship with my son and his family. Yes, Tomorrow, all of Brockton would be discussing the Thanksgiving scandal at the Prescott house. But right now, in this moment, I felt only relief. The phone rang a third time. Now it was Garrett. Grandma? His voice sounded uncertain, not at all like the confident young man I'd seen at dinner. Can I talk to you? Sure, Garrett. I put him back on speakerphone. I, uh, I was wondering, he stammered, struggling to find the words. What you said about me and Ricky. How do you know? I have my sources, I answered evasively. Are you, are you going to tell the police? I could hear the fear in his voice. I closed my eyes. My grandson, my blood relative, was afraid I would turn him in to the police. What have we come to? No, Garrett, I'm not going to the police, I said tiredly. But you should think about your life, about where it's going, and whether or not you want to keep it that way. I didn't mean to rob that store, he blurted out. It was Ricky's idea. I was just standing guard. But you were there. I didn't ask, I asserted. You were an accessory. Yes, he sighed. I was. Why, Garrett, I asked. Are you short of money? Are you in trouble? No, it's just… He hesitated. I just wanted to be cool, so Ricky and his friends would respect me. It was so childish, so naive, it hurt. Garrett, with his privileged life, with his opportunities, risking everything to be recognized by a group of bullies. Real respect, Garrett, I said softly, is earned not by crime but by deeds, honesty, hard work, integrity. I know. He sounded ashamed. I won't see Ricky again, I promise. It's not me you have to promise, I said. You should promise yourself. After Garrett and I talked, we sat in silence, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts. I thought about my grandson, about how easy it was for young people to lose their way, and how hard it was to get back on the right path. At least Garrett seems to have realized his mistake, Virginia said at last. That's something. Yeah, I nodded. I hoped it would be a lesson to him. I expected a call from Fallon, but it didn't come. Maybe she was too proud to call, or too angry, or more likely, she just didn't think she'd done anything wrong. We sat up late, finishing our wine, discussing what had happened, speculating about what would happen next. When my friends finally left, it was well past midnight. I stood at the window looking out at the city at night and thought about how one decision, one moment of courage could change a whole life. Tonight, I'd finally stood up for myself, finally told the truth I'd been hiding for years. And though I felt guilty for the pain I'd caused, I didn't regret my action. The Jarvis family was built on lies and pretense. Such structures sooner or later collapse under their own weight. I just gave the already wobbly building a little push. What would happen next? I didn't know. Maybe Jarvis and Sheridan would find the strength to talk honestly and save their marriage. Maybe Garrett would actually break up with the bad company and go back to his studies. Perhaps even Fallon will reflect on his actions. Or more likely, they'll continue to live the way they used to, lies and self-deception, blaming their problems on everyone around them, including me. But that is no longer my concern. I've made my choice, told my truth. Now it was their turn to make a choice. I lay in bed, feeling strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without a heavy weight on my heart, without feeling like I wasn't good enough, not loved enough, not important enough to my family. Today I proved, first and foremost to myself, that I deserve respect. And that was more important than anything else. Spring came early in Brockton. By mid-March, the trees were tender green and the first tulips and daffodils were blooming in the parks. On days like this, the city seemed to wake up from its winter slumber, brighter, louder, livelier. I sat in my usual spot at the Morning Star Cafe, sipping bergamot tea and watching Virginia pick out a pastry in the window. Beatrice had already taken our favorite table by the window, spreading fresh magazines on it, and Odette was late, as always. For the past 5 months, we'd met here every Thursday instead of meeting at my house. This small change symbolized something more to me, coming out of the cocoon, coming back into the world. After that memorable Thanksgiving, something changed in me, as if I'd shed a heavy weight that had been dragging me down for years. Gwen, come here, Beatrice called out, waving a magazine. You have to see this. I took my cup and joined my friend. She showed me a glossy page with an article about Brockton's charitable organizations. Among others, Sheridan's organization was mentioned there, marked suspended due to investigation. See? Beatrice tapped her finger triumphantly on the lines. The truth always comes out. So someone did file a complaint. I shook my head. I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. Virginia came over to us with a tray of cakes, a chocolate eclair for her, a lemon tart for Beatrice, and my favorite, a blueberry tart. What are you two whispering about? She asked, taking a seat. That Sheridan's charity work has finally caught the attention of the authorities, Beatrice explained, pulling the tart toward her. Oh, that, Virginia nodded. I heard about it from Martha Hodges. It seems that someone who attended your Thanksgiving dinner decided to test your word, Gwen. Robert and Margaret Hill, I suggested. They seemed like decent people. Anyway, Sheridan's not in the charity business right now, Beatrice remarked. She was too busy with the divorce. News of Sheridan's divorce hit Brockton the week after Thanksgiving. Another day later, everyone knew the reason. She had indeed found evidence of Jarvis's infidelity. As it turned out, the affair with Monica Baker had been going on for over a year, and many in their office knew it. Here I am. Odette appeared in the doorway of the cafe, elegant as ever, wearing a light gray suit and a bright scarf around her neck. Sorry I'm late, but I had some news worth checking out. What news? Beatrice, always hungry for fresh information, perked up. Odette sat down, ordered her usual decaf, and leaned toward us. Jarvis lost his house, she reported quietly. The bank took it away for non-payment of the mortgage. I felt something clench inside. Despite everything that had happened, it was a heavy blow to know your son was homeless. Are you sure? I asked. Absolutely, Odette nodded. My niece works at that bank. They tried to negotiate with him, offered to renegotiate the terms, but he just stopped answering their calls and letters. And where does he live now? Virginia asked with concern. He's renting an apartment on the outskirts of town, Odette answered. Pretty modest from what I'd heard. I remained silent, digesting the information. After Thanksgiving, events had moved quickly. Sheridan had filed for divorce within a week, and Jarvis had lost his job shortly thereafter. The company didn't want the scandal of his affair with his boss to tarnish their reputation. Monica Baker was fired, too. Last I heard, Jarvis was trying to find a new job, but his reputation in the Brockton construction industry was irreparably damaged. What about the kids? I asked. Garrett and Fallon? Garrett, as far as I know, is still living with his mother, Beatrice said. After he was expelled from the university, he got a job at an electronics store. An honest job, which isn't bad. Garrett was expelled shortly after we talked that night. Turns out, not only had he been skipping classes, but he'd been caught trying to hack into the college's computer system to change his grades. I didn't know if he was in contact with his father or Ricky Jenkins. I hope not, at least not with the latter. And Fallon? I asked with particular interest. How is she? My friends exchanged glances. Well, you'd better tell me about that. Virginia smiled. You were the last person to see her. I nodded. Fallon was the only family member I'd kept in touch with since that Thanksgiving. She'd come to my house in early January, frozen to the bone, with a backpack over her shoulders and eyes full of tears. Grandma, she said then, standing on the doorstep, I've made a terrible mistake. I need your help. It turned out that after Thanksgiving, Fallon began to rethink her life. My telling her that she had driven a classmate to attempt suicide made her realize the seriousness of her actions. She went to the hospital where Avery was lying and tried to apologize. Of course, they wouldn't let her in, but the very fact that she tried was telling. Then, when the divorce proceedings began, Fallon found herself between two fires. Her mother turned her against her father. Her father accused her mother of all sins. Eventually, she ran away from home and came to me. Fallon is doing well, I told my friends. She's found a job at the library, is still in night college, and even started volunteering at a real animal shelter. And she's still living with you? Odette asked. Yes, but only until summer, I smiled. We agreed that as soon as she saved enough money, she'd get her own apartment. I'll help her with the down payment, but after that, she'll manage on her own. And how are you two getting along? Beatrice asked. Isn't it hard? I wondered. It wasn't easy at first. Fallon was used to a certain level of comfort, to having someone else take care of the household problems. She didn't know how to cook, do laundry, plan a budget, but she was a quick learner and, more importantly, really wanted to change. We set clear rules from the beginning, I explained. She pays a small rent, participates in household chores, and follows a regimen. No parties, no shady friends. In exchange, I help her with her studies and give her advice when she asks for it. And she follows those rules? Odette asked skeptically. Surprisingly, yes, I nodded. I think she really wants to change her life. I even helped her write a letter of apology to Avery. I don't know if Avery has forgiven her, but the fact that Fallon has realized her guilt means a lot. You're an amazing woman, Gwen, Virginia said, squeezing my hand. After everything that's happened, you still have the strength to help your granddaughter. She's the only one who's truly apologized, I shrugged, and the only one who's really trying to change. And Jarvis? Beatrice asked. Has he tried to contact you? I sighed. Jarvis had called me several times after that night, but I hadn't returned his calls. Then came the letter, a long one, full of self-justification and accusations against me. I read it once and threw it away. But 3 weeks ago, he showed up on my doorstep, gaunt, with bags under his eyes and the smell of cheap alcohol. He came to see me at the end of February, I said quietly. He asked for money. And did you give it to him? Odette asked, though her tone made it clear she already knew the answer. No, I shook my head. I offered to help him find a job, suggested he go to a support service for people with alcohol problems, but I didn't give him any money. How did he react? Virginia asked with concern. How do you think? I smiled sadly. Angry, said I'd ruined his life and now I refused to help him. Accused me of helping Fallon but not him. Called me a horrible mother. Oh, Gwen, Virginia squeezed my hand even tighter. It's okay, I tried to smile. I'd long ago given up expecting him to be grateful or understanding. What did you say to him? Beatrice asked. I told him I was helping Fallon because she was truly repentant and trying to turn her life around, and he just wants someone to solve his problems for him, like he always does. I sighed, and I also said that he is an adult and should be responsible for his own actions. Bravo! Odette raised her coffee cup in a toast. You finally learned to set boundaries. Yes, but it hasn't been easy, I admitted. He's my only son. Seeing him like this, it hurts. Of course it hurts, Virginia said softly. You're his mother. But sometimes the greatest expression of love is to let a person face the consequences of their actions. I nodded, feeling tears come to my eyes. The last few months had been an emotional roller coaster. Sometimes I woke up in the night questioning the rightness of my decisions. Am I being too hard on Jarvis? Shouldn't I, as a mother, forgive him unconditionally, help him get back on his feet? But then I remembered the years of neglect, the years when my feelings, my needs, my dignity meant nothing to him, and I knew I was doing the right thing. You know, I said, sipping my tea as it cooled, sometimes I think I could have done more when he was little, teach him responsibility, honesty, respect for others. Don't blame yourself, Odette said firmly. You were a good mother. We all remember how you raised Jarvis. You gave him everything you could. But maybe it was too much, I countered. Maybe I spoiled him too much, protected him too much. Archibald always said I didn't let the boy face difficulties. You did what you thought was right at the time, Virginia said. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them. And you are learning, Beatrice added. Look at what you're doing with Fallon helping her, but setting boundaries, letting her work out her own problems. I smiled, remembering teaching Fallon how to make lasagna from Archibald's recipe last night. She had been so serious, carefully recording every step, asking questions. At times like that, I saw in her a glimmer of the sweet girl she'd once been, before Sheridan had begun molding her in her own image. Speaking of Fallon, Odette said, how was she dealing with her parents getting divorced? It was hard at first, I admitted. She cried a lot, blaming her father, her mother, herself. But gradually she began to realize that their marriage was unhealthy long before that Thanksgiving. I think now she's just trying to move on. Does she communicate with her parents? Beatrice asked. With Sheridan sometimes on the phone, I answered. Not with Jarvis. She says she's not ready to see him since he started drinking. What about Garrett? Virginia asked. They've met a few times, I smiled. You know what's amazing? This situation seems to have brought them closer together. They hardly ever talked to each other before, but now they support each other. Well, at least something good came out of the whole thing, Odette said. A lot of good, I countered. Fallon's changing for the better. Garrett seems to be on the mend too. Sheridan isn't fooling people with his phony charity work anymore. And I stopped searching for words. And you're finally free, Virginia finished for me. Yes, I nodded. Free from guilt, from always trying to please people who didn't care about me. Free to be myself. How does that freedom feel? Beatrice asked with a smile. I wondered, how can I describe this feeling of lightness that I had been experiencing for the past few months? Like a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders that I'd been carrying for so long that I'd almost stopped noticing it. You know, when Archibald and I were first married, we used to go swimming at Crystal Lake, I began, remembering those distant days. And there was a time when I'd swim far enough out, lie on my back, and just let the water hold me. The sky above my head, the silence around me, and that feeling of weightlessness. That's what it feels like. That's a beautiful comparison, Virginia said fondly. And now what? Odette asked. What are your plans? I smiled. Plans. Once my only plan was to live to see another day without feeling completely unwanted and unloved. Now, Fallon and I were talking about going to the seaside this summer, I said, after she moved into her apartment. Just a little vacation, a week at the coast. That sounds wonderful, Beatrice agreed. And I'm thinking of going back to teaching. I felt myself blush, as if I'd confessed something indecent. Not full-time, of course. Maybe I could teach a literary class at the local library or give private lessons. That's a great idea, Virginia exclaimed. You've always been a great teacher. And, I lowered my voice as if sharing a secret. I've started writing. Writing? Odette interjected. What kind of writing? Memoirs. I shrugged. Nothing much. Just stories from my life. Thoughts, memories. Not for publication, of course, just for myself. And maybe for Fallon, so she knows what our family used to be like. It's beautiful, Gwen, Beatrice said with genuine admiration. You always expressed yourself so beautifully. We sat in the cafe for a long time, discussing my plans, the city news, the latest books we had read. The usual conversation of ordinary old women, but it meant so much more to me. When we finally got ready to leave, Odette stopped me at the door. Gwen, she said seriously, I want you to know that we're all proud of you. What you did on Thanksgiving took tremendous courage, and the way you're doing it now is incredible. Thank you. I felt the tears come to my eyes again. But I couldn't have done it without you. Nonsense, Odette said with a wave of her hand. You were always stronger than you thought you were. It's just that now you finally realized it. We hugged goodbye and I went home, where Fallon was waiting for me with a story about her day at work and a new recipe she wanted to try. On the way out, I thought about Odette's words. Was I really strong? Or had I just gotten to the point where I couldn't take it anymore? Probably both. I thought about Jarvis, about how he'd looked the last time we'd met, lost, angry, scared. Part of me still wanted to protect him, to save him, like when he'd fallen off his bike as a child and I'd rushed to him with band-aids and kisses. But he's not a child anymore. And sometimes the greatest expression of love is to let a person find their own way, even if that way is difficult. I felt sadness thinking about my son, about how our relationship had turned out. But I didn't feel regret. I had done what I had to do, for myself, for my dignity, for my life, and life went on. Not perfect, not cloudless, but my own. A life in which there was now no room for those who didn't respect me, didn't appreciate me, didn't love me. And there was a sad but necessary truth in that.